If we did live in a food secure world, we wouldn't have food banks and we wouldn't have all the organizations that distribute food.
There's no free lunch in agriculture, and if you're removing nutrients, you have to add them back.
The students are actually coming to me in the morning asking, has the delivery arrived yet, and what's coming next?
Hi, I'm Dagmar Timmer.
And I'm Vanessa Timmer, and this is the Sustainable Region.
Today we're visiting Alder Acres Farm in Langley, and we're just in time for the annual pumpkin patch.
And this is a Halloween tradition for many Metro Vancouver families. It's one of the few times we get out to the farms.
But pumpkins are actually just one of hundreds of crops that we grow here in the region.
In today's episode, we're going to look at the idea of food security.
The definition of food security is quite simple. Food security exists when all people have access to safe and nutritious food for an active and healthy life.
It sounds simple, but turning this idea into reality is a big task.
It is hard to believe that food security could even be an issue here in the Lower Mainland, where we are blessed with arguably the best growing conditions in the country. But the 90,000 people a year in BC who depend on food banks would disagree.
If we did live in a food secure world, we wouldn't have food banks and we wouldn't have all the organizations that distribute food. There are many variables that play into someone being food insecure. Affordable housing, high food prices, a decent employable income. If all of those factors were addressed, we wouldn't exist. And that's ultimately what we hope to do one day, is drive ourselves out of business.
Professor Graham Riches has studied food security for the United Nations. He says food banks are evidence that we are not food secure.
We've become, over time, dependent upon, food charity. And that, I think, is an enormous problem because food charity allows us to believe that the problem is being solved, and the problem is not being solved.
Food security is a new way of looking at food production and distribution that recognizes some key ideas. Firstly, that access to food is a basic human right and therefore a social responsibility. Secondly, that our food supply should be environmentally sustainable. And thirdly, people should contribute to their own food security by growing some of their own food in backyard or community gardens.
So, is there enough food to feed everyone? I'm here at Van Hol Produce, one of the largest and busiest distributors of fresh food in Metro Vancouver. More than 400 varieties of fruits and vegetables from 25 countries make their way in and out of here every day. Clearly, there's an abundance of food to be had. Then why should we be concerned about food security here? Well, experts say that while we're very good at growing food, it's how it's processed and distributed where we fall short.
We don't have the processing infrastructure locally, so we are shipping out our blueberries and losing all of that kind of value-added potential. We probably buy some of them back from Washington, which makes zero sense.
Janine de la Salle is a food systems planner who believes it is consumers who have put food security on the political agenda.
I think politicians are going to start paying attention to this more because people in the community are saying, what about food and agriculture? This is important to us. Eating is, really important. So how do we make that better for everyone?
One way to make it better would be to reduce the amount of waste in our food system.
50% of all food that's produced, in the United States, from the point it sort of leaves the ground to the point it, allegedly goes onto someone's plate and into their mouths is wasted, 50%. I think the figure in the UK is about 22 million tons a year. These are staggering figures.
Staggering, especially considering the fact that globally, more than 1 billion people do not have enough to eat. That's more than the populations of Canada, the United States, and the European Union combined.
The bananas that we put in our children's lunch boxes represent another problem, the growing trend towards monoculture. Well, that's where one country like Ecuador decides to grow one crop, like bananas, for export rather than a diversity of crops to feed its own population.
You actually destroy local biodiversity, you destroy local agriculture, you create a one economy region which may employ a certain number of people, but others will have to leave the land and go into the cities. When they go into the cities, then there's massive unemployment. And then the problem becomes one of how do you feed people who are unemployed?
But according to the experts, we should continue to buy some food that's grown in other countries. Like coffee, for instance, something that is simply not growable in all but a few areas.
Drinking coffee is not a bad thing. It's just a matter of looking at how can we make sure that the coffee we're buying isn't destroying the land where it's being grown, isn't hurting the people that are growing the coffee, so that people are able to earn a fair living that way, and that the way it's transported and moved around is as energy efficient as possible.
Maybe the question for people who live in the West is whether we're willing to actually change our diet, to have less choice, to enable people elsewhere to produce their own food to feed themselves.
Food security experts agree that we should all be eating more vegetables and less meat. That's because animals eat grains that could otherwise be consumed by humans. And mangoes in winter? Is that really necessary? Well, it's something to think about the next time we go shopping.
Communities are coming out and saying, you know, this is an important issue for us. Let's start to think about it. Let's start to address it. And I'm very hopeful because of that.
MetroVancouverRecycles.org. It's recycling made easy. Go to MetroVancouverRecycles.org. There, you'll find a database of reusable and recyclable services available throughout Metro Vancouver. Choose from 24 categories of recyclable or reusable items. Virtually every type of item is included, from paints and solvents to tires, electronics, batteries, and more. Enter your address and you'll get a list of nearby locations to bring all your items for recycling, reuse, or safe disposal. MetroVancouverRecycles.org. It's recycling made easy. Find it at MetroVancouverRecycles.org.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region and our look at food security. We've gone back to the earth today to take a look at Alder Acres Farm.
When the subject of food security comes up, talk often turns to the 100-mile diet.
That's the idea of only eating food grown within a 100-mile radius of our home. Like this pumpkin here. Hey, let's make pumpkin soup.
That's a great idea. I love pumpkin soup. It seems like a no-brainer. Why wouldn't everyone want to eat locally?
But is it the solution for a more food secure world? Not everyone thinks so.
What do we got? Check anyone's pantry, like I did with 100 Mile Diet co-founder James McKinnon, and you're likely to find foods from all over the globe.
You know, this is a curry sauce. This is a product that's going to have so many ingredients that if we added up the number of miles that all of these ingredients had traveled, it could be the distance around the world.
Food experts like Janine De La Salle aren't sure buying only locally sourced food is a good idea.
The 100-mile diet started with, can we do this? And then it went to, we should do this. And then that middle part of, well, should we actually do this, was unexamined.
Buying foods from other countries supports their economies. De La Salle worries that a wholesale change in the way we eat could do great harm.
I love coffee, I love my mangoes and my avocados. And the economies of those countries are really important to consider. So if we relocalize food, what happens to those industries in other countries?
McKinnon says food will always be traded globally. It's the way it's done that needs to change.
We need to build strong local food systems first. Beyond that, there's going to be a place for trade. And of course, that trade, we're going to have to make that as clean and green as we can get it. And that may mean innovations like a return to sail freight, who knows what. That's the world that has yet to be designed.
It's not about good food and bad food. It's not local good, not local bad. It's more complex than that.
These German egg noodles, looks like they're actually from Germany. And
McKinnon believes that burning fossil fuels to ship food like this pasta from Italy just isn't environmentally sustainable.
If we want to be serious about global climate change and the kind of changes in the fossil fuel economy that, the best evidence and the best science and the best thinkers in the world have told us we have to, then we're going to have to draw our food from closer distances.
McKinnon says he and his partner now source about 90% of their food locally.
Fresh from the garden outside.
They have now added some non-local food items to their diet, like chocolate and beer. Cooking clams with beer, I like it. This is good.
That's a first for me, but I think I got a good feeling about it.
Critics of the 100-mile diet say growing your own food or shopping exclusively at farmers markets isn't possible for most people, and spending hours preserving it isn't practical either. Not to mention logging personal miles in search of local foods.
I've yet to see any research that suggests that eating locally and in season as a general choice is going to add up to be more energy inefficient than choosing to eat, than making the global choice every time. I think they're about ready.
Oh, that looks great.
Do I advocate the idea that people eat only foods from within a 100-mile radius? No, I don't. I advocate that people eat more local food more often, and I advocate that people do try to learn a better balance between the global and the local. We've settled on about 90% local food because that's reasonably easy for us to accomplish. But even if everybody switched to 20% local food, that would be an enormous change.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region and our look at food security in Metro Vancouver.
There are about 20,000 farms in British Columbia. 2,500 of them are here in Metro Vancouver.
And every one of those farms, as well as farms around the globe, are entirely dependent on phosphorus-based fertilizers.
And phosphorus helps produce this fat broccoli, but unfortunately we're hitting a global peak in phosphorus production.
And this could be devastating for agriculture worldwide. But a new technology developed right here in Metro Vancouver might hold the answer.
Your washroom has a lot to do with fertilizer because that's where a lot of that food that was grown and the materials that you consumed end up.
Aaron Britton is an engineer developing a technology which extracts phosphorus from wastewater treatment plants.
They use bacteria primarily to concentrate the pollutants, to remove them from the water. We add magnesium, which is the missing ingredient in the pellets that we make. It starts a crystallization reaction, and slowly over the course of about a week, the pellets grow from microscopic crystals into 3 or 4 millimeter diameter pellets, and sold as fertilizer.
2009 was a good crop year at the University of British Columbia's student-run farm. They harvested 250 types of fruits and vegetables. One person who knows the roots of their success is Art Baumke.
I'm a soil scientist, and I come at agricultural systems from the standpoint of soil as a basic resource. All of our natural vegetation on terrestrial landscapes depends on soil, and most of our agriculture is highly dependent on soil.
Soil is a mix of organic materials and minerals. The big three are nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, NPK.
So these elements are all essential either for plant or animal life.
Soil may appear sedentary, but really it's a cosmopolitan global traveler. It can be washed into waterways, carried away in the wind, or absorbed through roots of plants. Those plants are then exported to markets near and far. The minerals are then drawn into our bodies by eating plants or animals that have consumed plants.
There's no free lunch in agriculture, and if you're removing nutrients, you have to add them back. And some crops remove more than others. Heavy feeders like potatoes and grains, for example, remove tremendous amounts of all the nutrients, including phosphorus.
Fertilizers are the means to that end for most farmers, including organic farmers who are allowed to use non-synthetic fertilizers. Phosphorus is derived from mining, primarily in China, Florida, and Morocco.
There's no replacement for phosphorus in our diets. We have to have it, plants have to have it. We really have to make sure we have it there available in adequate amounts.
It's an energy-intensive process to mine the phosphorus out of the ground. It has a significant footprint, but it's also an absolute necessity to the supply of fertilizer around the world.
In 2008, world fertilizer prices were affected by several shifts in supply and demand.
Price of fertilizers with the increases in nitrogen and phosphate and phosphorus and all of the components have just skyrocketed, and they basically have doubled in the last 3 years, which is a pretty stiff increase, and it makes it very difficult for agriculture to be profitable.
Prices leveled off the following year, but some experts predict that price shocks could recur as secure sources of mined phosphorus decline.
One of the things that we tried to do is diversify and to rotate. You use green manures, you plant cover crops to help bring the soil quality back up. So it's made farmers really go back and do their thinking.
Data on world reserves is sparse, and forecast scenarios vary, but some estimates predict the end of phosphorus in less than 100 years.
Well, the term peak phosphorus is very much like the term peak oil. When you get to the stage where you're taking out more than new reserves that you're finding, so you've peaked out, we certainly are running out of mineable resources of phosphorus around the world.
The need for alternate sources of phosphorus is what brought Ostara Incorporated into being. Their source of phosphorus begins where we left off earlier, with human consumption of plants as food. We regularly take in more phosphorus than our bodies can absorb, leaving a large amount of phosphorus to be recovered at wastewater treatment plants.
Probably about half of the wastewater treatment plants in North America have a mandate to remove phosphorus and nitrogen from the wastewater. They tend to be recovering 80-90% of the phosphorus, or removing 80 or 90% of the phosphorus from the wastewater.
Agricultural practices are also benefiting from advances in soil science.
What's happening now is that we have more scientists who can understand the biology of plants, fungi and bacteria, so that we live within the cycles and manage our soils to better take advantage of what those organisms can do.
Back at the UBC farm, most of the 2009 harvest is in. The crops carry away nutrients that have been pulled from the soil and need to be replenished.
The fundamental principle of sustainable soil management is that you build the soil, you pay attention to the soil, and then that will feed the crop.
Reclaimed phosphorus creates a closed-loop system where the nutrients taken from the soil by crops are extracted and put back to be used again.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region and our look at food security. Most people would agree that growing your own food is a good idea, even if it's just to supplement the other food on your plate. These days, people are taking a page from their parents and grandparents, digging up a patch of lawn to grow their own food. It's a trend that's popping up around Metro Vancouver, and not just in private backyards. Check out the gardens at George Pearson Hospital in South Vancouver. It's a long-term care facility for people with serious disabilities. At Pearson, you can grow your own food, even if you have to use wheels to get around.
In the last year, residents of George Pearson Centre have been taking part in community gardening, with the goal of supplying organic food and flowers to the center's community kitchen and to sell at nearby farmers markets.
Oh, just watching everything grow and flourish. That's my favorite part. You know, seeding, first of all, putting your seeds in, and then miraculously, they grow.
Pearson has been here since 1953, so this has been lawn for probably going on 60 years. I was literally biking by Pearson and had been thinking of where this kind of an idea could be located, and I thought, it's Pearson. Of course it's Pearson. It's just, you know, the more I thought about it, the more it made so much sense.
It's an institution that's very old. It's an institution that's pretty archaic often in the way it looks and operates. And what we're attempting to do is to introduce into it a lot more human activities. So building relationships is as important as growing food and flowers. And we've been doing both at the same time.
I mean, to me it was a big miracle because I didn't figure I had a green thumb. So I thought, geez, this is pretty easy.
It's turned out very well. It's been a great morale builder for most of us.
First and foremost is the fact that everyone's in wheelchairs. And so we, rather than bending down to the earth, you need to bring the earth up to people. And so that was one of the very first things that we did was figure out a design for tabletop gardens.
I'm growing tomatoes, cucumbers, sunflower, and radishes.
And have you enjoyed gardening?
Yeah, very much.
The farmers on 57th have commissioned 3 urban farmers to grow and manage the field crops at Pearson. 10% of the yield goes to the center's volunteer-run community kitchen for resident meals. The urban farmers sell the remaining crops at local farmers markets.
Okay, let's start with that. That's probably going to give you a fairly full bag of this.
Is it really?
Yeah. And it's been a lot of work, but in many ways it's been effortless because people see a need, they understand the concept, it can be explained, I guess, clearly enough that they quite honestly just take it and run with it. Upwards of 80 people have made that decision coming into this project.
This has been a wonderful project. It's brought joy here to George Pearson Centre, joy to all of us, to be frank with you. There's a legacy here that we hope to be able to maintain.
It's been such an affirming process for me as a Vancouverite as well, just to say our city is filled with dreamers and builders and growers, and it's pretty exciting.
Welcome back to the Sustainable Region and our look at food security. We're going to end on a positive note for the future. We're talking about our children, of course. They're the ones who will take our small steps towards food security and turn them into a global success story. Through a unique program called Agriculture in the Classroom, Metro Vancouver kids are learning the importance of their connection to the land.
All right, guys, busy day today. We have our Take It by BC program on today, our feature. So we're doing our beef bourguignon.
At Maple Ridge Secondary School, the students in Trevor Randall's culinary arts class are learning how to cook a classic dish from faraway France with ingredients from local fields.
All right, so what we're gonna do is add just a little bit of butter, okay, for some flavor. We're gonna add some oil, okay?
The butter, the mushrooms, the beef, the onions, and carrots, they all come from nearby. Thanks to a program called Take a Bite of BC, run by the nonprofit group Agriculture in the Classroom.
We had no idea that providing fresh local food would have such an impact on these students. But when they start to understand that it is produced just locally, they can start to relate to the farmers and to the producers.
So far, 14 high schools with culinary programs are getting fresh produce and other agricultural goods delivered every 2 weeks until the end of the year.
Charles, how we doing?
Very good.
That's perfect.
We now have created this harvest celebration. It's run from September to December. But now the chefs and the students are saying, can we keep this going? Can we keep it going? There's actually 60 teaching kitchens remaining in the province, and we would hope that somehow we'll be able to expand it to all 60 kitchens.
It's supporting all the local farms and the markets that we buy it from.
And there's a side benefit to all this excitement that hasn't escaped the attention of the folks who run this program.
These are all going to be new chefs, and when they go out into their working world, they'll be looking for fresher, more local product.
It's much better to support our local farmers and stuff like that. Like go to a farmer's market on the weekend and buy your produce instead of going to the store and getting something from who knows where.
We go to the produce store once a week. We check out what's available, what's inspiring, right? And by me being inspired, that energy turns into the students and makes them inspired.
I'm surprised at how much variety we have of the produce that we're using and the meats and everything that we're using here. So far it's been a real opportunity to get to use them.
I think it's great. I think that all the locally grown foods that are brought into our school right now they taste amazing. They're good. We're supporting our community and what they're growing, and they taste wonderful.
The program's also been a huge hit with the 300 to 400 kids who line up every day for a chance to eat cafeteria food that's a cut above. Chef Randall thinks it's only a matter of time before suppliers respond to demand and local food makes it into the mainstream supply chain.
I think everybody, by crying out and telling their local MLAs, telling their suppliers, telling their reps that they want and demand local ingredients, eventually we'll get there. Right now we're just saying we want it, there's a demand for it, let's make it happen.
Well, I hope we've given you some food for thought. It's a fascinating subject.
And we've had a great day today at Alder Acres.
For sure. I'm actually going to take this guy home and make a pie.
I thought you were making soup.
Yeah. Soup and pie.
I'm in. Let us know what you thought of today's show or suggest some story ideas. You can call us at 604-436-6794 or email us at sustainableregion@metrovancouver.org.
For the Sustainable Region, I'm Dagmar Timmer.
And I'm Vanessa Timmer. See you next time.